you create your own reality. And that means that if there is a non-ideal condition in any part of your personal or professional life, the real source of the problem is going to be something about you.
Hello and welcome to Pillars of Wealth Creation, where we talk about creating financial success with a special focus on business and real estate. I'm your host, Todd Dexheimer. Now, let's get to it. Hey, welcome back to the show. I'm your host, Todd Dexheimer. With me, excited to have Mike Irving. Mike, how are you doing today?
I'm great, Todd. Thanks for having me, man. How are you?
I'm doing excellent. So wanted to bring you on the show. Mike is the founder of Advanced Business Abilities. He's got over 20 years of leadership experience, and Mike combines personal insight with practical strategy to help founders lead with integrity, help them improve decision making, and grow without burning out, which is huge, right? It's so easy to try to grow really fast or grow where you want to go, but then can you avoid that burnout? So we're going to
Yep,
dive into a
it's a
lot of
trap.
good stuff here. But Mike, give our listeners maybe a little bit more about your background.
Yeah, sure, happy to. So for the last 20 years, I've run Advanced Business Abilities. We help leaders, business owners, senior execs to identify and remove the resistance that restricts them from getting what they want. Prior to that, I spent 10 years in sales. So I started my career at 21, going door to door, doing sales on commission only in Sydney, Australia. And and I learned an enormous amount about that. It gave me an insight into the fact that sales is a process and a set of principles and models that govern it. And I started to learn how to utilize that process. And then 18 months later, I was 22. I incorporated my first company. Um, had no idea what I was actually doing when I look back on it now, but I was silly enough to think I could do it at 22, so I did. And and yeah, over the course of that business, I hired lots of business coaches and got a little bit frustrated by many of them because they seemed to make my life harder, not easier.
Hmm.
And Advanced Business Abilities was the seed of Advanced Business Abilities was planted when I met a group of people in 2025 who really helped me to totally change my thinking and my point of view and approach to leadership and business.
How, you just mentioned something I think is really fascinating. You said that you hired a lot of different business coaches, but some of them made your life more difficult. How, like,
Hmm.
what did they do? Like, what made it more difficult?
So a lot of the times, a business coach will come in and they've got, not all of them are like this, so I'll preface it with that, but they've got 50 ways of improving sales and 100 ways to increase your marketing reach. And they've got this list of systems that, unfortunately, a lot of them have bought a franchise or they've kind of gone and purchased this system and they go out and they are now going to be there to help business owners. And so you end up in a weekly or a fortnightly series of meetings with them. And in the meeting, they'll sit down and go, right, so, what's going on? Okay, we want to implement these systems in order to counteract that. So between now and when we meet in a week or two, we want you to implement these systems. Here it is.
Hmm.
Well, all of a sudden, the next week or 2 weeks, everything goes haywire. The shit's hitting the fan, and you're under the pump. And you arrive at your next meeting, and they go, right. So, Mike, how'd you go? Did you implement those systems? I'm like, no, man. I had this happen, this happened, this happened, this happened, and this happened, and so
Yeah.
no, I haven't. Oh, Mike, look, we're not going to get anywhere if we don't implement these systems. You really need to get on top of this. And I'm like, you're just adding more pressure. This is not in any way, shape, or form helping me. This is not actually dealing with the reality of what I'm experiencing day to day in my business. You're
Yeah.
just attempting to, force me to do things that you've been told are the right things to do. And so for me, the approach that I learned to take was I already knew the things that were the best things for me to be doing. I knew that. But the problem was I didn't seem to be able to regularly and consistently do them and take those actions and get them done. So why? What's the problem there? What's the real source of that issue?
Hmm.
And fundamentally, what it comes down to is that there's a problem that's blocking implementation. Now, I don't care what business someone runs. The how to run any business, it's all available for free online.
Yeah.
Go into ChatGPT and you can get a full business plan written for you inside of 15 minutes, right? The how to do it is not the problem.
Yeah. Very true.
So the real problem is, yeah, so the real problem is somewhere else. And so one of the one of the things that I spent a lot of time doing in my 20s was I read lots of books. And all these books would all say the same thing. They all said, you create your own reality.
Hmm.
And I really wanted to believe that. I wanted to be that causative in my life. But man, it used to frustrate me because they would say that, but then they would never give the equation of this is how, right?
Yep.
None of those books would go into the detail of you create your own reality. So if your reality is this right now, that means that you're doing and thinking these ways.
Yep.
And if you want to shift your reality to be this, well, then stop doing these five things, start doing more of these 10 things, and over time and distance, you'll get there. None of those books could actually lay it out that way.
Yeah. Right.
And so I was looking for an answer to that question, which is, well, how do I create my own reality? And and that was the big mission and drive, which is what I found in 2005 when I met this group of people who helped me change my life.
Hmm.
And so the approach we take now is, all right, you create your own reality. And that means that if there is a non-ideal condition in any part of your personal or professional life, the real source of the problem is going to be something about you. Now, we don't know what it's going to be yet. It could be attitudinal. It could be competency based. It could be aptitude based, either too much aptitude in one area and not enough in another, or vice versa. It could be a belief system. It could be a set of conditions that when they occur, you react in an unintended way without realizing you're doing it. And all of that's based on subtle underlying ideas and beliefs that you hold.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, that's the approach that we take in helping people. It's how you think is going to determine your reality.
So how do you start to break down? I mean, if it's you create your own reality, which I agree with. The source of the problem is you. Yep, but 100%, I'm on board there. So, but if you mentioned in the beginning, like, look, your income limits are created in your own mind. Okay, well, if I'm making $100,000 a year and I want to go on and make, $1 million a year or whatever it might be, how do I find out? How do I figure that out? Like, how do I figure out the source of my problem is me and dive in deeper?
That is the question right there. That's the question that wants to be asked and answered. And we have a way of doing that, which I'm more than happy to talk about in detail if you'd like me to. The one thing I'll say before I talk in detail about it is that I can tell you from my own experience, because in 2004, 2005, even 2006, was like I really was confronting that there was a whole bunch of things I was doing that made no sense at all.
Hmm.
I was the problem. I knew that, but I couldn't work out like what's the source of that problem? Where am I going wrong? How have I ended up here? Right? So to answer your question, I know two ways that you can achieve that. So the first way that that could be achieved is if you spent time, let's say you want to go from 100 grand and you want to get to 250 grand. If you spent time with somebody who is trained enough, and if that person spent 30, maybe 40 hours with you one on one, And in that time, if they observed you and asked you questions and watched you interact with prospects and watched you interact with family and friends and observed you in moments when you're under pressure, a really well-trained person might be able to develop an opinion about where the challenges are.
Sure.
Um,
Makes sense.
so that's one way. And I'm not a huge fan of that way, even if it was me doing it, because we're still going to end up working with my opinion. And I don't like working with opinions
Mm,
because everybody's got one, and your opinion is always going to be clouded through the stained glass window that you look at the world through,
sure.
right? The thing that I found in 2005 when I met this group of people, this guy named Des, and I was introduced to him, and I was not having a good time in life at the time. I'd hit the wall again. I didn't know why, how did I keep creating this situation where I hit the wall and things weren't going well? So I meet him, and to cut a long story short, he goes, "All right, well, look, sounds like you've got some challenges. It sounds like you're willing to look at the fact that you've got those challenges. Before I can tell you what we're going to do about them, the first and highest priority we have is to work out specifically what is it about you and the way that you think, act, behave, and believe that is creating those challenges that you're experiencing."
Mm,
And I went, "Yep, I'm all in. How do we do that?" He said, "All right, I want you to go home and I want you to respond to these questions. I'm going to give you a questionnaire." Now, this was back in the day where originally I actually, like you get multiple choice.
yeah.
Do you remember when you colored in
Oh
your
yeah.
selection?
Yeah.
All
Yeah.
right. And then I faxed it back in, and he had a code that it like, and then he sent that off, and we got these graphs. And so it was a long time ago.
Yeah.
We've developed that since then. So it's now an online assessment. But this assessment took like 2 hours.
Mm,
So it wasn't a short little 15, 20-minute personality test. It
yeah.
was an in-depth evaluation and assessment of how does my mind work? What are the survival mechanisms I've developed in order to survive my experiences of life?
Mm,
What are the skills I've developed that have helped me to achieve? What are the blind spots that I have that are restricting me without me knowing it? And so that's the approach we take now. We use data. We've got a series of assessments. They take a couple hours for someone to complete. They are not for everybody. I'll forewarn with that. Like, for someone to have success with the approach that we take, it is absolutely essential that you're willing to inspect the ways that you might be reaching down and grabbing the rug and yanking it right out from underneath your own feet without knowing you're doing it.
yeah. You gotta be vulnerable.
Yes, 100%. And if somebody's not willing to do that, then we are not for them. Our service will not work for them. They won't enjoy it, and they won't get value out of it.
Mm,
So we encourage people like that to just, yeah, we're not for you, and that's okay.
yeah.
There's nothing wrong with that. Um, but if people are really willing to inspect, and if they are really willing to look at and take ownership for the fact that if they have this reality, it means that there's something they're doing that's creating it. Then once we've identified where resistance sits in their thinking, the assessments are super valuable, but the real value of our organization, the real value of my business is in our ability to help somebody alter and change
Yeah.
what the assessments reveal about you.
Truly.
Hmm.
Yeah. Because if
Yeah.
I know what's wrong with me and I don't do anything, who cares? Like I just know what's wrong with me then.
Well, then it becomes a really handy excuse to use when we do something silly.
Yeah. Right. It's just who I am. Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
test told me
Yeah.
so.
That's it. We actually use those assessments as a before and after as well. So,
Mm,
you know, you take them, spend 6, 12, 18, 24 months involved in our community, and then take them again. Let's measure what actually changed. Where have you got to? Is there now anything else that you feel would be beneficial to do some more work on? And if so, hey, the community's here to support you.
Love it. Um, how how do you how do you how do you build a high performance company, high performance team? You know, in your bio, you talked about that without burning yourself out. So how do we do this business? Because it's so easy, and I see a lot of people doing it. They burn themselves out, and a lot of people burn themselves out, quite frankly, before they really even get started much, before they really get successful. I think I see it quite a
Mm.
bit. How do you help people do that?
Yeah, it's a great question, and I see it a lot too. I'm reminded of one of the members of our community. He's been involved with us for 10 years now, and I met him a year after he had started his business. And I won't use names because he's exiting his business right now, and he's set up with an amount of money where he never has to work again if he doesn't want to. Um, and I'll respect his privacy about that. But when he first came to me, he thought that what he wanted was a better morning routine. He knew that he wasn't performing to his best every day, and therefore his organization wasn't operating efficiently because he wasn't at his best. And
He,
um,
he
and
thought that was a
in his
morning
thinking,
routine.
in his thinking, he thought, well, if I get a good morning routine, that's going to solve this problem.
Yeah, sure.
So I did what I did with everybody and said, okay, well, let's make sure that we're clear on what we want to work on here. So go and complete the predictor profile assessments, and let's conduct a strategy session, and let's see what that uncovers about what the real source of the problem is.
Hmm.
So he did that. It came back, and when we finished the strategy session, he went, "Yeah, all right, a morning routine's not gonna handle that, is it?"
Hmm.
And I was like, no, it's morning routine's not going to change this, is it? So if we want to improve and help you to perform at your best or at 85, 90% of your best every day, that's not going to happen until we adjust these things here. Most people think that in order to be a top performer or to run a top performing team, it involves lots of hard work.
Yeah.
That's a belief. Unfortunately, it's a false belief that is fed into by lots of what we see on social media about, grafting and working hard, and I want to be successful. In order to be successful, I'll get what others can't by doing what others won't. Look, if it was true that hard work got you the success you wanted, then what that would mean is that everybody who works really hard would have that success,
Yeah. True.
and they don't.
True. Yeah.
So
There's a lot of
therefore,
people
it's
that put
false.
in
It's
huge long days and they're
Yeah,
just barely scraping by.
that's correct.
Yeah.
So, once again, it's I think the most important thing in order to grow a business, and I'm not talking growing to $200 million. Like, let's talk about the reality of growing a business to a point where it is self-sustaining and where it rewards you as the owner of the business as both an employee and a shareholder, and makes a profit after doing both of those things to a sufficient amount, right? That's a good business.
Yep.
Now, doing that, it's not going to be about hard work. Hard work will get you started, yeah. I don't want this to sound as though I'm saying hard work's a bad thing, but certainly what I'm saying is that a clarity of intent, a clarity of strategy, and a well thought out, well executed plan, that's going to trump hard work every day.
Yeah. Yeah. It's not that hard work's not important. It's that hard work isn't the most important thing.
I agree. Yeah,
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah.
Yep,
Yeah.
that's exactly right. Now let's take that one step further, because if you think about what we just spoke about there, there's a way of thinking that is involved in having the right balance of work, strategy, well thought out plan, execution, etc. Right? So there's a self leadership aspect to achieving in life and business. And so if we have a framework to approach self-leadership with,
Hmm.
and if we can think of that framework as a set of principles and models and systems that we follow, that makes it much easier to then ensure that I do the things I said I'm going to do, and I execute my plan, and I have a clarity of thought. And if we have a framework like that, then that framework becomes something that we teach and train our team to think with. Because our role as leaders, like if we're going to, I don't care what business you're in, if you're a leader, and everybody's a leader, by the way, if you're a leader, your number one role is to create more leaders within your organization. And that doesn't happen by luck. So I'm a big fan of having framework systems, principles, models, you know, the frameworks, systems, principles, and models that govern success today, they're the same ones that governed success 50 and 100 years ago. It's not any different. The difference is that today we have much more developed ways of implementing those principles, models, systems, and frameworks, right?
Yeah.
We have the internet, we have AI, we have all these
Right.
things that make it easier for us to do if we learn how to use them.
Well,
And
and
the
but they also
application of
make it
them
more
is
complicated sometimes.
that's right. Yeah, that's exactly right. And the application of those things, there is a set of principles that governs that as well. And if you
Mhm.
break those principles, you'll actually get your system working against you
Yeah.
rather than working for you.
Yeah. For sure. So, how do you create more leaders in your business?
That's the awesome question. Um, the first and most general answer that I can give to that is have a framework and a system that you're going to teach them. And if you're smart, you're gonna teach them the system and the framework and the principles and the models that you live by. And you're going to demonstrate them. You're going to walk the talk. And you're going to then support them to understand those models and systems and principles. And if I was going to say what's the number one underlying most important skill to develop in order to develop leaders and develop leadership, and this is going to sound really boring when I say it. So I'm prefacing that now. But once I've said it, I'll then explain why, right? The number one most important and most valuable skill is communication.
Yeah.
And the problem is that communication as a skill is very misunderstood. So so I'll give you an example of what I'm referring to here. So when a lot of people think about sales, some people think about sales and they think about the dodgy door-to-door vacuum cleaner salesman or the secondhand used car salesman, and they
Yeah.
get the ick.
Yeah.
You know
Yeah.
that feeling?
For sure.
They think of people who are pushy and persuasive,
They
and
get
they
all
don't
the
like that
scripts
feeling.
and yeah, they got their
Yeah,
talking points, and no matter what you say, they're going to stick to their talking points. And yeah.
yeah. The other thing that a lot of people think about when they consider or think about sales is if I say bro marketing, it's like just talk and talk and talk until they you beat them down and they
Yeah.
say yes. And
Yeah. Yeah.
um,
They finally give up. Like, fuck, I got to go do
yeah,
something.
yeah,
Just let's go.
yeah. Um, and the reality and truth for me is that both of those examples are examples of really, really poor salesmanship,
Yeah.
really poor level of skill in sales. Now, I define sales as effective communication towards action and commitment.
Hmm.
And if I give an extended definition, the act of selling is communication between two parties, the end result of which is that both parties make commitments to take actions that provide benefit to both parties.
Hmm.
That's what selling is. That is
Yeah,
the
I
act
like
of
that.
selling right there.
Yeah, it's not one-sided transaction. It's not you getting rich
No,
because somebody bought your scam.
that's exactly right.
Yeah,
It's really effective selling involves taking the point of view of win, win, win.
yeah,
How does everybody involved in this transaction win?
yeah,
If you don't do that, then you're taking a point of view called win lose, which is going to mean that sometimes you're going to lose.
yeah,
And I don't recommend that you do business with people where you're going to lose.
yeah. I I don't like losing myself. So yeah, why have other people lose? I agree.
Yeah.
Um,
Take it one step further again. So that's sales, right? Leadership is sales.
hmm,
It's effective communication towards action and commitment. If I'm leading a team, what am I looking to do? I'm looking to make sure that my team makes commitments to take actions that provide benefit to them, to the business, and to our customers and prospects. So the underlying skill of communication, which communication is the transfer of data from one terminal to another. A terminal could be a person, a terminal could be a business. It's a
yep,
transfer of data from here to here.
yep,
Most people think that when they communicate, it's like, have you ever asked somebody directions? Hey, I'm new in town. I want to get to this place here. And the person goes, oh, yeah, no problems. Go up here, turn left. Then you're going to go about 500 meters. You're going to bang a right at the red stop sign. And then you're going to go about 3 kilometers up. You'll see this beautiful white house on the left-hand side and a big oak tree on the right. You're going to go left there. And they keep going, right? And like 5 minutes later, you're left going, I was lost after the red
yeah.
stop sign. And what's worse, have you ever
I
had
know I got to
somebody
turn
then
once.
ask you,
I
yeah,
don't
yeah.
remember. Yeah,
Yeah, and have you ever had somebody then ask you, right, now tell me, how are you going to get there? Just I want to make sure you've understood.
yeah.
If
No,
somebody asked that question, I bet you'd go, oh, shit, I've got no idea I don't know. I'm going to put it into my GPS and I'm going to
yeah,
go. That happens all the time in conversations.
100%.
The leader goes, right, team, I want you to do this, this, and this. And the leader thinks, okay, I've told them what they're going to do. That's it. We're done. They're going to go and get it done. How many times as a leader have you then confronted the fact that they didn't do it, or they didn't do it the way you wanted them to do it, or they didn't
Mhm,
do it in a thorough way that ensured it
mhm.
produces the result? That's on me as the leader because I
For sure.
didn't check to make sure that they've actually understood. I didn't check to make sure the data was transferred and duplicated and thoroughly understood and copied and replicated.
Yep, yep. I think so many times where I've told people to do something or guided them to do something, and it's because it's for, I think a lot of times for me at least, and I think this is for a lot of people, it's like second nature to me. So it's so easy. So when I communicate it with somebody, it's just I'm just like it going, this is what we do, blah 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 blah. Go ahead, do it. And they're just like that person's like, I don't even know half the words you just said. I
Exactly.
but I just assume like, wait, this is second nature. Like this is so easy. Why wouldn't you get that, right? And
Yeah.
until I realized like that's what I was doing, it was a problem. It was definitely a problem. And I would get irritated that somebody wouldn't follow through with what I asked them to do. Yet it wasn't them that was the problem. It was me that was the problem. the problem.
Yeah, the principles that is at play there is the idea that there's a gradient of understanding. And with something like that, you're up the gradient because you've done it so long, you've done it so many times, you
Yep.
just know it, and you might not even know all the things you know about doing it because it's just second nature to you now.
Yep.
The problem that exists for leaders is making sure that we're aware of whoever it is that I'm communicating with it's important that I'm aware of where they are on
Yeah.
that gradient
Yeah.
because it's important I talk to them based on where they are, not where I am and where I want them to be. My role as the leader is to help develop them up that gradient so that they can get to a place where it's second nature, they know everything about it, and they're just going to do it effortlessly the way that I would, right? But that's not going to happen in 3 seconds.
Absolutely not. Yeah.
Mm.
Mike, what do you see the best business owners do differently? What do you when you're looking at the like guys, gals that you're coaching that are just doing great? What are they doing differently than the rest?
Mm. Yeah, that's an awesome question. I've got quite a few things that I would list off there, but I'll say a couple of things just as an initial summary. So first of all, they are very aware of their own sovereignty. And what I mean by that is that they're very aware that they are the king or the queen that sits on the throne in their world, and that they create the realm that they're in. And so they absolutely do their best to ensure that they're creating that realm intentionally.
Mm,
And then the next thing is that they are also very aware that every single person involved in their business is also a sovereign being. They are their own king or queen that sits on the throne in their world. And the owner of the business acknowledges the sovereignty of every person involved in their organization.
yep.
And in doing that, what they do is ensure that everybody is choosing, intentionally acting. Now, there's a whole lot behind what I just said. So, does that spark any questions that you want to ask? Because I can go into lots of detail there, but that's a there's a depth behind it.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, definitely. Let's dive a little deeper into that. So what you're saying is that I I position myself as everybody positions themselves as like their own king or queen, right? That we think of ourselves, we're thinking of ourselves essentially. And so as a leader, you have to understand that you're creating that, but that everybody that's working for you is also creating that for themselves. Am I correct on what you're saying there?
Well, that's excellent. So may I?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. So we know that if we look back through history, there are different kings and queens who all of them made choices, right? All of them made decisions. That's
Hmm.
the number one function of the king or the queen is to
Yep.
make decisions. Now, when we look back through history, we can see that there were different kings and queens who made decisions from different points of view.
Yep.
So, some kings and queens made decisions through the point of view called, okay, what's best for me?
Yeah.
I want all the gold. I want all the power. How am I going to do what's best for me? And we know from looking at history that often when kings or queens did that, it had a certain outcome eventually.
Hmm.
The outcome was often anarchy at some point. It was
Yep.
rebellion. It was not, we're not putting up with this anymore.
Yep.
Um, Other kings and queens took the point of view called, okay, so we've got this decision to make. So, what impact is this decision going to have on not just me? What impact will this decision have on my family? What impact will this decision have on everyone else who's involved in this realm? And how can I ensure that I make the decision that's best for everybody? And that had a very different set of outcomes over time and distance.
For sure.
So then you can also consider that there were, um, for example, the Hopi Indians, when they made decisions, their consideration was not just how is this going to affect me and the people in the realm. They were considering how is this decision going to affect 7 generations down the track.
Wow.
Now, what we're talking about there is that when we go to make decisions, the point of view that we take has a serious impact
Hmm.
on the decisions we make and the outcome of those decisions. And so, what I'm talking about in terms of leadership is okay, everybody who is a part of my team, they're all choosing to be here. They're choosing to be here because they're aligned with the overall mission and purpose of our organization and the way we serve our customers.
Yeah.
And so when I'm making decisions, I'm making these decisions. It's important that I consider what's the decision that's going to produce the best outcome for everybody who's involved in the realm, all the stakeholders, not just me, not just my family, but all of our staff, all of our customers, all of our future customers, our suppliers. How can we make sure that this delivers for everybody? And it's a very different point of view. And then the next part of that is also recognizing that all of those people, they're choosing to be stakeholders, right? They're choosing to be involved,
Yeah.
which means they can choose not to be at any point in time.
Right.
And so, and that's okay because sometimes you'll make decisions that you think are the best outcome or will produce the best outcome. And some people may not be on board with those decisions. That's okay. That just means that that relationship in that time is over. Um, when people do make a decision to join the team, they're making a commitment. They're saying yes to producing a result, to filling a role, to being on the team, to putting their shoulder to the grind wheel. Now, a lot of people misunderstand when I talk about sovereignty and acknowledging the sovereignty of your people. That doesn't mean that if somebody rocks up tomorrow and goes, "Hey, you know what? I've decided as the king, I no longer want to do that role, but I still want to be paid."
Yeah.
Well, no, that's not our agreement. That was not the agreement. So you're free to leave if you want to, but hey, this was the agreement, and I'm going to hold you to it. It doesn't mean all of a sudden just giving everybody total free choice over, yeah, you want to be the CEO for tomorrow? No problem.
Yeah. You do what you want, right?
No,
Yeah.
there we make choices, and then it's up to us to ensure that we actually keep the commitments that we make.
Hmm. How do we get everybody on, or not? Of course, you're never going to get everybody. You already said that, but how do we get people on board to follow
Communic
this
communication.
communication?
Yeah, man. Everything comes down to communication.
Yeah.
And here's the thing that it took me a fair bit to really get a handle on, which is that everything we do communicates.
Hmm.
Every facial expression, every subtle tone that we use, every bit of body language, everything we do communicates. And what that means is that when we communicate, we're either communicating intentionally, which will be very likely to produce intended outcomes if we develop the skill, or alternatively, we're communicating unintentionally. And that will be very likely to create unintended outcomes, or we could say unintended consequences. And it's not often that I see those being very positive.
Yeah. Yeah. Usually not.
No.
This is good. What's a mistake that you see people making, business owners? We talked about the best business owners, but how about some of the business owners that well make mistakes, which is everybody. So what's a mistake? Well, maybe let's rephrase that. What's a mistake that you've made, and how have you learned from
That's a great question, man. And I'm happy to air my dirty laundry on that
it? Yeah.
subject because there's plenty. Um, in my 20s when I ran my first business, and before I'd really done any kind of work on developing myself, apart from learning how to sell, I did not have I didn't have sufficient emotional management and control in place.
Hmm.
So I could get angry.
Yeah.
I could be, I was, yeah, I behaved in ways when I look back now, I go, ew, I'm not happy, but I'm not proud of that.
Yeah. Me too.
And yeah, and I think a lot of people do. It's just sometimes difficult to admit that or confront that, particularly publicly.
Yeah.
But yeah, I know that I did not. When I was in my 20s, I couldn't even necessarily tell you the emotion I was feeling. Never mind deal with it myself. Like it
Hmm.
was just I wasn't emotionally intelligent. I hadn't been taught that. I
Yeah.
wasn't,
Yeah.
my mum and dad are amazing. They're fantastic people. They're the most caring people on the planet. And like many families growing up, you know, boys are taught to never let them show it hurts, or at least that was my, when I grew up, that's what I was taught.
Yep.
And so I didn't know how to deal with emotions.
Yep.
So what do you do with them, right? You shove them down, you push them aside, and you keep going.
And sometimes you explode.
Unfortunately, that's exactly right. And
Yeah.
unfortunately, those emotions, they tend to get stuck and then they rise up at a time where you don't really want them to.
Yeah.
So, um, so that was a major issue for me. And in fact, when we talked earlier about the diagnostic tool that we use, when I first completed that assessment, it absolutely identified that I had attitudinal problems.
Hmm.
So I was overly critical, and and I also had a high blame trait. So it was easy for me to go, oh, that's because of this stuff over here, rather than, okay, hold on, I'm experiencing this, which means I created this, right?
Yep.
Um, I had a competitive score of 100,
Which is
which
good, right?
which meant no, it's not good.
If you, well,
At a 100, you're playing the game to win at all costs. You
got
can't
got
see
it. Yeah,
win,
that's not
win,
good.
win. You can only see win, lose.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Definitely not good.
I also had a patience score of 0.
Ooh, that sounds bad too.
Yeah, it was bad, man. It was, yeah. So, I had a whole bunch of things that this assessment revealed about me where it was like,
Yeah.
oh, and my attention to detail, it was also 0.
Mm.
So that's not a good combination, right?
Yep.
My impulsive score was 100. So I was making decisions really quickly without paying any attention to detail whatsoever.
You're like a bowl in a
Mate,
china
there's a
shop.
recipe for, yeah, there's a recipe for disaster right
Yeah.
there, right?
Yeah.
And it was like, wow, no wonder I keep hitting the wall.
Yeah.
I'm not thorough. I've got this thing that happens when it comes to detail. I just want everybody to shut up. Come on, let's keep the eye on the bigger picture. And
Mm. I
no,
think a lot of us are
no,
like
the
that.
the
Very driven, right?
yes,
Entrepreneurs driven. But you get into those traps, right? Where you're like a bull in a china shop. You're just you've got some good qualities, but maybe too much extremes. Um, but to both sides,
yes.
right?
Yeah, if you think of there are four main, or shall we say, um, there are four behavioral quadrants, or we could call them personality quadrants, right? Um, and each of those quadrants is made up of a set of very specific traits. Now, most people will have one or maybe two dominant quadrants.
Yeah.
I certainly had one. I had one dominant quadrant, and that was the controller assertive quadrant, which can be very, very valuable, right?
Yep.
But the other three quadrants, yeah, they weren't really readily available to me. It was like the dominant controller assertive was the way I was going to go all the
Yeah.
time. What I aim for now, what I've aimed for myself, and what we do our best to help the members of our community achieve is I want to be able to choose which of those four quadrants I'm utilizing in any given moment.
Hmm. Interesting.
I don't want it to be automatic.
Yeah.
I don't want to default to one because that's the easy one.
Depending on the situation and what's needed in that situation, you want to be able to choose what quadrant you're playing in.
100%. If
Hmm.
I'm in a certain scenario, then having the ability to use the controller assertive quadrants super valuable, right? And if I'm in another environment where, for example, I'm having a conversation with my wife, then the controller assertive quadrant's probably not going to be the quadrant for me to use.
Yeah. Yeah.
It would be much more valuable for me to use the supporter empathy quadrant
Yeah.
in order to make sure I understand how she's feeling. Otherwise, I'll just bowl her over with what I want, and
Yep.
that's not going to work, right?
Yeah. You'll solve
Um,
all her problems, which isn't what she wanted.
that's right. If I'm selling something and I'm talking to a highly technical person,
Yeah.
it's not going to work for me to be all warm and sociable and controller assertive. It's going to be really important that I put my attention to detail, organization, analyze a logical hat on
Yep.
and have a conversation with that person based on what has their attention.
Yep. Makes sense. Man, that
Mm,
makes too much sense, actually. I'm glad you mentioned this part here because it's really easy to just default to your automatic personality or your original personality, whatever you want to call it. But to be able to mold yourself a little bit to where other people are, meet where other people are at, right? And you said it right there. I mean, I talk to people all the time and I get very analytical people. And if I'm trying to just say jokes and schmooze them over and not talk the technical side, they might laugh. We might have a good conversation, but they're not going to do business with me because I didn't make
no.
them feel truly comfortable the way they needed to feel comfortable. They needed me to talk numbers. They needed me to talk
Mm.
reasoning. They didn't need me to talk but the same thing is I could talk to another guy or gal and I could talk technical and they would just go, I don't really care. Like they're falling asleep. They don't want anything to do with it. Right. That's not what they called for. They called to see what I felt about the deal, right? Do I feel good about it? If I say, yeah, I feel really good about it, okay, then I'm in, right?
Yeah.
So love that.
Yep.
Mike, I got a
It's
couple
it's
last questions.
Go ahead.
Yeah, so I guess anything else that we maybe missed or haven't hit on that you want to cover? Otherwise, I'm gonna wrap up here with a couple questions.
I might look. I Based on the conversation we've had, we could keep going for
Yeah,
hours. I don't want to take too much of your time, and I hope that what we've talked about so far has been really valuable for your audience and for you to
yeah,
to a degree. Um, and if you want to have another conversation at another point in time, we can go much further into depth about sales. Or yeah, I'm
love it.
easy. I'm open either way.
Love it. Love it. Yeah, I think having a full conversation about sales is always a great conversation because everybody who listens to the show is in sales. It's just how it is. We are all really in sales. And so I think the sales conversation is definitely a great conversation to have constantly. All right, last couple questions. What's a favorite book you can recommend to our listeners?
Oh, is it okay if I recommend two?
Yeah, absolutely.
So, so one book that I think is beneficial for everyone to read is a book called Humans Are Underrated. The author is Jeff Colvin, and that is a fantastic book. He talks about the changes that are coming and that are already here in AI, automation, robotics, etc., and the impact that's going to have on people who were employed 5 years ago that today no longer have a job, or if they still have a job, they won't in another 5 years.
Hmm.
And then that's the first 80 pages of the book. The second 80 pages of the book, or the rest of the book, it's another 300 pages, is all about, well, if that's the case, then what's going to make humans valuable? What is it that actually makes a human valuable?
Yeah,
Because there'll be a bunch of lawyers that'll no longer be lawyers because the computer will do everything they do faster.
yeah, yeah.
But humans don't trust computers the way they trust other humans. And so, as a summary, the thing he talks about is the most valuable skill that you can develop as a human are the skills of human interaction.
Hmm.
And that's close to home for me because
Yeah.
it's all about communication. It's
Yep.
all about empathy and being able to understand and read what's going on for somebody. And those are super valuable skills.
Yep. 100%.
The second book I recommend is by Napoleon Hill. And most people, when they hear his name, they think about Think and Grow
Think,
Rich.
grow
But
rich. Yep.
he wrote another book. Yep, he wrote another book that I think's better, and it's called Outwitting the Devil.
Outwitting the Devil.
And
I've heard of that one. I have
yep,
not read it.
I'm a big fan of that book.
Awesome. Love it. I don't think I've had either of those books. I know I haven't had either of those books recommended. So I appreciate you recommending something new. I get a lot of the same books. I get Think and Grow Rich quite a bit, and I get a lot of other books that I'm sure you've either read or heard of. All right,
Mm.
last question, Mike. What are your three pillars of wealth creation?
Mm. First pillar of wealth creation is invest in yourself. There is nothing more valuable than your ability to use your mind as a tool of creation.
Hmm.
The second pillar of wealth is then take that investment and go and take the successful actions necessary to achieve the objective result that you decide is what wealth is for you.
Yeah, that's one of my favorites.
And yeah, and the third pillar of wealth is give yourself the freedom to actually enjoy it.
Mm,
There's no sense in being the richest man in the graveyard if you spent your whole life working and you didn't actually get to go and do the trip or live on the boat or ride your motorbike around the Himalayas or like, what's the point in that? Give
yeah,
yourself the permission to enjoy what you've created and
yeah,
don't let anybody else's opinion tell you what you should or shouldn't do.
love that. What are you doing at this time of your life to for enjoyment? Just one thing that you really are passionate about.
So my wife and I have just purchased a boat in Newfoundland, which is an island on the east coast of Canada.
Yep,
And we're living on a boat for 6 months of the year while we get to travel around the island of Newfoundland and check it out.
that's cool. Love it.
Mm.
Love it. Enjoy that. Mike, last question. What how can our listeners get in touch with you?
So we actually have a book that we're selling online right now. It's called Sales Scripts Are Dead. If any of your listeners would like a copy of that book, I'm happy to email it to them free of charge. If they get in touch, they can find me at advancedbusinessabilities.com or connect with me on LinkedIn. That's no problems at all. My email address is mike.irving@advancedbusinessabilities.com.
Awesome. Mike, appreciate it, man. A lot of good information. We'll have to have you back on. We can talk more about sales here in the future, but really appreciate you joining us on the show. A lot of good insight. You have a fantastic rest of the day.
My pleasure to be here. Thanks for having me, man. Enjoy the rest of your day too.
Hey, thanks so much for listening. I appreciate you being a loyal listener. Say, I would love to have you go on to our Facebook page and subscribe. Give us a thumbs up. Go on to iTunes or wherever you listen and give us a rating and review. Don't forget to subscribe. Your rating and review just helps us push this out to more and more people and continue to grow our audience and hopefully positively affect a ton of people out there that really need this and want this. So the other thing I've got for you is a free ebook on my website. So go on to venturedproperties.com, and download our free ebook on real estate and on syndication. And I've got some data points in there, some really good stuff for you. So I'd love to have you take a look at that. It's free. I'm not expecting anything from it. And also, look, if you want some help in multifamily, want some help learning, growing, getting your business off the ground, I would love to talk to you about what it would look like to work with me potentially and see if that's a good fit. So you can go to coachwithdex.com and check that out. And we can definitely have a call. Thanks a lot for listening. You make it a fantastic rest of the day. I'll catch you on the next episode.